We've had some great content, and we're going to have a great next speaker, Brian Felsen from Massa Labs. They're a Layer 1 protocol that's optimizing for decentralization on all of the layers. So let's give Brian a big hand. And from Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Brian Felsen from Massa Labs. We're the first Layer 1 blockchain to be truly decentralized across all layers of the protocol. Right before I walked in here, I was sitting in the speaker room next to Ryan Selkis from Massa, who's actually talking on the other stage. And I remember reading his report a year ago, and here's what he said about, just looking at data and the industry trends. He said, 2022 will be the year of DAO tools. And he said, I've bet on it with my personal portfolio, and via Massari's bet the company moved to build an operating system for Web3 participation. So that was what was going to be 2022. And here's what we got instead. We got Do Kwon from Terra Luna, which I got personally wrecked. And a lot of that, the problems were created or exacerbated, in all these cases, by decisions of just one or two or a few people. With him, it was the construction of the algorithm for the stablecoin. It was the way he marketed it. And it was his decision to announce the composition of the Luda Foundation Guard. And then, of course, you've got this rapscallion Sam Bankman-Fried with what he did with Alameda and Solana's decision to put a bunch of their reserves on the platform. And then you have, of course, the bridge hacks, which cost the industry billions of dollars and tons of credibility. So all of these just came down to the decisions of just a few people. And the question is, why? I mean, what we ended up with in this Web3 world ended up with a whole lot of centralization. And it's like there's centralization everywhere. There's centralization of decision-making in terms of just like in Uniswap, a few whales could make votes that privilege themselves. Or susceptibility to censorship, how a website and a DApp on a website could be forced to take down some stable coins. And of course, the security vulnerabilities that come with that. So you have to ask yourself, why are we in Web3 then? I mean, without some meaningful participation in governance, without a say in where our money goes, without a voice in the community, you get the same stuff in Web2 or in TradFi or whatever. So why are we here? I flew from Los Angeles. Why come from all over the world to be here? And I think that after such a crap year, that I think decentralization is everything. I think that's the whole thing that unites us across the political spectrums, and I think that it needs to be considered in 2023 and going forward as a non-negotiable. Now, there ends up being centralization rearing its ugly little head through all layers of all of the blockchains that I can think of. Like in Polygon, they executed a hard fork last year, and it really only took, a little over a dozen validators to do so, which is kind of shocking given the huge size of the thing, right? Or, Phantom, they had an outage which was just triggered a domino effect from just 2 validators, and Solana was able to restart their entire mainnet. And I have to ask, well, is it really a blockchain if you can just turn it on and off and reboot it like your mom's computer? So the question is how decentralized are the blockchains on the blockchain layer? And we have this thing called the Nakamoto coefficient, which kind of evaluates that. And that's the way to quantify the decentralization of a system such as a blockchain. And it represents the number of entities, which could be validators, token holders, third parties, that you need to compromise at least one essential subsystem. So for Bitcoin, the Nakamoto coefficient is about 4, and that's due to the size of the largest mining pools. And in Ethereum post-merge, it's again shockingly low. It's about 3. And most of the others are somewhere between 1 and 10. And a lot of that is by design, because it's much easier to scale when it's centralized. And a lot of it is either to protect themselves or to incentivize the insiders. So with Massa, ours is a little larger. Ours is about 1,000. And a lot of that is through our philosophic commitment to decentralization and the technology that we've created that have made it possible. So right now, we're on testnet. We have over 6,000 validators, and we can do 10,000 transactions per second, which is kind of amazing. They say that this is going to be the ZK summer, yet our transactions per second are even higher than many ZK projects. But there's a very low cost to entry. If you want to be a validator on a Phantom, it might cost €250,000, and an Ethereum 32 ETH, which is what, about 50,000 nowadays. And on Massa, it's really about 200, 250, which is kind of a lot cheaper, and it's a lot easier to become a validator. Part of this is our philosophy. Part of it is we have a block-click architecture, which helps us scale. A blockchain, if you think of it, is really a chain of blocks. The blocks are created in sequence, and they make a chain where each block references the previous block. But on Massa, the blocks are created in parallel threads, and each block can reference one block of each previous thread without waiting for it to propagate through the whole system. Now, as part of our philosophic commitment to decentralization, our tokenomics are such that they're decentralized as well. Other chains will keep coins centralized in order, once again, to protect and incentivize the insiders. But when the whales get hold of too many tokens, there's all sorts of problems that can ensue. You can have unfairly distributed voting, there can be price manipulation, and of course, security compromises. So, on Massa, our commitment to the Nakamoto decentralization coefficient of 1,000, that occurs because of our philosophic commitment and then the technology that enables us to make it well distributed to the public. Now, it's not just the blockchain layer. There's also the tooling centralization that you can find in other protocols. And the problem is that the more layers that you have, then there's more points of failure. And the more points of failure, the more problems. And we've seen that, AWS outage took down a major marketplace like DYDX. And that happens, once or twice a year. And then you have Axie Infinity's Ronin Bridge, which got taken for $600 million. And it's not just the blockchain and tooling layers, but the middle layers can be centralized. And you'll see this in indexing, like in the graph, or automation protocols that trigger smart contract events, like Keeper and Gelato, and oracles, like Chainlink and super oracles. And the problems with the centralization can include the power distribution, which is endemic to the staking model, or issues of data correctness, like the slashing model, and you'll see spikes in the graph, and security, if it only takes a few nodes to compromise your favorite oracle. So there are workarounds, to be sure. I mean, there's token centralization, which kind of defeats the point of camping of being in Web3. And then there's also legal documents where you're having to sign something to cede the power to a central authority. Now, Massa has a new technology that enables us to decrease our reliance on these other layers. And it's called autonomous smart contracts. Now, the problem with traditional smart contracts, as you know them, a classic smart contract needs to be activated by transactions, which are emitted off-chain, often by centralized bots. So what happens is that a server reads the blockchain and detects the need for smart contract updates. And then the server sends a poke transaction to wake up the smart contract. And again, that's a single point of failure, and it's centralized. So what happened, look at what happened with MakerDAO, right? The centralized poking server failed in March of 2020, and 4 million was lost. Now, other protocols have what they call automated smart contracts, and how that works is that they use cloud infrastructure or botnets to wake up the smart contract, to automate liquidations and stuff like that. But again, it's centralized. A single point of failure relies on a server. But with Massa, we have autonomous smart contracts. Now, these smart contracts of ours, they can wake up by themselves and emit new operations autonomously. And how it works is that they emit a message to be processed in the future, or they register an event listener. And then the message or listener triggers a smart contract execution. There's all sorts of benefits to using these autonomous smart contracts that are being seen right now in our community. There's decreased cost, so you don't have to spend for third-party integration. They're much more efficient because there's no centralized bots, so there's no cloud infra or automation that's necessary. They're much more secure because it mitigates the possibility of private keys being taken or hacked, or middle layers. They're much more robust because there's no exposure to a single point of failure or downtime or slowdowns of servers and oracles. They're persistent. They can live on if the developer team or server team leaves, and they're censorship resistant as well. Nobody can stop them. Now, there's all sorts of great use cases that can happen in DeFi. You could do limit orders without needing private keys whatsoever. You can do autonomous liquidations under collateralized positions. You can do regular payments, such as to employees, dollar cost averaging, bookkeeping without a poke server or oracle, and you can monitor pools for siphoning or other weirdness or other events. One of the projects that we're really excited about that's on our ecosystem right now is called DUSA. It won several hackathons and it got a grant from us. It's DeFi, but again, it doesn't use any bots whatsoever, and it's censorship-resistant, hack-resistant AMM. So its website is hosted entirely on-chain, and it enables on-chain limit orders. And if you look at the bottom right, there's a picture of an on-chain limit order. Now, what the on-chain limit order, what's cool about that is that the limit order itself is an autonomous smart contract that emits a message that has to be processed in the future, and the trigger is when the price hits a certain threshold of the asset. And this could be done with a bot, but the problem is that you got to wait for consensus or you got to compete with other orders, and that slowdown, you might not be able to get out of your position in time. Or, it's a single point of failure, so problems can ensue. There's also, the autonomous smart contracts also have great applications in NFTs and games. For NFTs, you can imagine what can be done. You can do self-evolving NFTs, like on-chain generative art or collaborative art. You can create life on-chain that lives without your interaction. You don't have to go poke it or do anything to evolve it. It can actually just grow old and grow white hair like I did. Also, you could imagine avatars that morph depending on on-chain events. Like your avatar, your PFP could get like happy or sad depending on the price of your favorite token today. And also could have great applications in gaming as well. You could have autonomous crypto mobs, richer NFT interactions, universes which evolve unpredictably, or even evolving games where autonomous smart contracts can play together, representing players or non-player characters. Now, it's not just on these layers that there's centralization all through Web3, but also on the external layers as well. Websites of your favorite Web3 projects are still hosted on centralized services most of the time. So some DEXs can be forced to delist a cryptocurrency, for example, and some governments, of course, can ban it. And then there's the financial institutions, of course, which governments can restrict access to the reserves that are backing the stable coins, like, for example, USDC, which are held by centralized financial institutions like a little company called BlackRock. So our solution, we've got a decentralized web client. Now, when a website is hosted on a single server, there's a single point of failure, like in December of 2021 when the BadgerDAO website was hacked for 120 million, or just last August when Curve Finance's front end was hacked for over $500,000. But we have decentralized websites that are on-chain. So all you have to do is you can just register your domain.massa, for example, like dusa.massa, on the Massa network. Then you can design your app in a smart contract, like an NFT or a game, so that way the site itself is the smart contract, and then people can just interact with it right through the regular browser. And this is something that you can play with right now. You can just get it on our GitHub. You can just download it and install it and try it out. Now, there's many use cases of our decentralized web. For example, you could do decentralized blogging, so that way it could be completely censorship resistant. You could have front-end security. DeFi dApps or whatever can mirror the website, so that way they could point there and there's no central servers to hack. And one cool thing is that you could have tunable mutability. So you could keep the whole website on-chain, but if you have some really pretty or rich or large media, that could be off-chain that's not mission critical, and it can point to it. Now, for all of this great technology, we have gotten some really good traction in the ecosystem for such a new project. We've got games, we've got node trackers, wallets, NFT projects, uncensorable media. And we've got really robust communities as well. There's over 6,000 testnet validators. We've got tens of thousands of people following us on social media. And we have thousands of people that are acting as ambassadors and that are really advocating for us all over the world. Right now, you can play with testnet. We've got 3,000 transactions per second, which are stable. Very, very low hardware requirements to get involved. Custom WASM smart contract engine. And it's really, really, really easy to get involved. As I said, there's low barriers to entry, very low cost, very low hardware requirements. We have a very developer-friendly tech stack. One thing I didn't mention is that you can make the smart contracts in TypeScript, which is really good because a lot of it's a very, very widely used language, and most Web 2 developers don't know Solidity, so we'll be able to onboard people at scale. And if you participate in Massa, you'll have first mover advantage. So that way you won't be a small fish in a big pond and you won't have to compete for block space. It's got a really familiar UX to Web3 users, robust testnet incentives, and there's a team and community that can help you build. So if you care about Web3 enough to be here in this room to really see me talking right now, you should be building on Massa, because after the year that we've had, decentralization should be non-negotiable. So come meet the team at our booth. Our booth is literally right outside this room, and you can meet our intrepid heroes, the 40 people that bring backgrounds in all of the geek sciences, from physics, robotics, and computing, as well as me. I'm from Los Angeles and started an office there, and we're really digging down hard in a culture to be able to onboard people at scale. So we're happy to help out with your projects and to meet you and to help whiteboard with developers. So that's it. Come to our booth right outside this room. Thanks.
And Brian, so awesome presentation, super interesting, and obviously people should care deeply about decentralization. But the truth is, 99.9% of the world still does not. So what are you seeing? How are you, driving the success? What are you seeing that's working? That people, what kind of companies are going, wow, Massa, which everybody should like, but which ones like today are attracted?
Which ones today are what? I'm sorry?
Attracted to the, and deploying on the Layer 1 protocol.
I think that by providing the protocol and the technology that makes it possible to scale, for example, using TypeScript to be able to onboard Web 2 developers, and by having all of the standard, I mean, everybody here is talking about, oh, we solved the blockchain trilemma. I think half the booths in this place have that. But,
or at least 2 out of 3 of them.
Or at least 2 out of 3. But I think that the main thing is by making it possible to onboard new developers at scale, by appealing to culture, and also by solving the problems that have so plagued Web3 and have caused Web3 not to be trusted because of the
I get why. It's like mom and apple pie to most people in this room.
Well, it's mom and apple pie, but we're doing it.
Yeah,
and that's the real difference.
But who is responding to it today? What are the companies have you been most successful with?
We've gotten lots of investment from a lot of small private investors. Lots of small ones. We're not centralized, and we have tons of engagement in the communities who are translating us in other languages, starting their own communities and developing projects. We're brand new. We're going to testnet this fall. We're going to mainnet this fall. And on testnet, we've got, as I say, 6,000 validators. There's tons of traction for such a new project.
Okay, let's give him a big hand.
Thank you.
Really super interesting project.